Dramatic readings of Andria McClellan, Norfolk, Virginia politician on Facebook. Part 4. Her Victims Speak. In this episode, Andria McClellan's victims tell the stories of their abuse from the safety of the Victim Protection Program. I'm a 70-something guy who's been retired for years. But I have my hobbies to keep me busy, and one of them happens to be making YouTube videos. Now, I've never had any kind of face-to-face run-in with Andria McClellan. Even though she's technically my neighbor, I've only spoken to her a handful of times and for never more than a couple of minutes. And in person, we've always been civil with each other. So I can't say for sure what's in Andria McClellan's head or her heart. All I know is that she's been awfully quick to pounce on me, trying to embarrass me or whatever, on Facebook and in mass emailings. I can only theorize about what she has against me, but I'm sure it has something to do with one or more of 3 projects that I've been involved in. 1, my efforts to document Norfolk Southern's coal dust polluting. 2, building my house diagonally across the street from her house. And 3, my efforts to have the so-called love locks removed from the neighborhood pedestrian bridge. When I lived in West Ghent, a neighborhood next to Norfolk Southern's coal loading terminal in Norfolk, I was appalled by what I found while cleaning around my house. Coal dust everywhere, and that dust is insidious. It's black and grimy when it builds up on surfaces, but it's so fine you can't see it in the air. Just the kind of particles that get sucked deep into people's lungs and can cause serious health problems. That's why I decided to start documenting Norfolk Southern's coal dust polluting by making telephoto videos of their rotary dumpers and conveyors and ship loaders in action. And those videos showed horrible stuff. Clouds of dust billowing high into the air. The local newspaper even did a front-page story about my efforts. But nothing changed with Norfolk Southern. It didn't care, and the people at Virginia's Department of Environmental Quality, who were on a first-name basis with Norfolk Southern bigwigs, weren't much help either. Since I was living in a different neighborhood from Andria McClellan at the time, and she wasn't on the Norfolk City Council yet, I didn't know her or anything about her. I didn't even know that her livelihood comes from Norfolk Southern, because she's married to a Norfolk Southern executive, or that many of her political campaign donors would be current and former top Norfolk Southern executives. But Andria had probably heard about my front page efforts. Those efforts included several articles in the local online zine Alt Daily, letters to the editor of the local newspaper, and several forays to the Norfolk City Council, along with members of the Sierra Club, to show my photos and speak against Norfolk Southern's coal dust pollution. So I suspect that had something to do with why Andria was ready to pounce on us when my wife and I were building a house across the street from her house.
The Planning Commission had approved the design of our house unanimously. Then, after the house was already built, we had to go back to the Planning Commission to get a minor change regarding the front steps okayed. But now Andria was sitting on the commission, and this was her first Planning Commission meeting. As she began to speak about our project, I was so astounded that I started taking notes. She told the other commissioners that she knew her neighborhood well, and the lot our house was being built on used to be a neighborhood gathering place. Then she started dissing our house's design, making all kinds of hand gestures about its width and height.
It
was only as wide and high as a city code allowed.
Then she declared that the neighborhood would be up in arms again if we tried to make any changes. My husband then stood up and refuted everything she said. The vacant lot had never been any neighborhood gathering place. There had never been any neighborhood uprising against our house, and the design and appearance of the house had already been unanimously approved by the commission. The Neighborhood Civic League had approved it too. The truth was that we had gone to considerable extra expense to make the house look appropriate to the historic neighborhood. And throughout the building process, I only received glowing comments from neighbors who passed by. And the building site was kept very clean. But Andria's lies managed to spook the other commissioners, so our approval was delayed a month until the next meeting of the commission. In the meantime, my husband petitioned the Norfolk City Council to recuse Andria from any further consideration of our house. He also filed a Freedom of Information Act request for any available recordings of the Planning Commission meeting as evidence of Andria's biases and lies. But all the city claimed to have kept was a summary of the meeting. And while this summary contained a detailed account of what other commissioners and witnesses said, it unbelievably contained nothing of what Andria or my husband had said. When my husband complained to the Virginia Freedom of Information Advisory Council, he was told that Virginia's lax recording law requires that only a summary be kept of official meetings. In other words, crooked officials can get anything they say removed from the record under the guise of brevity and summarizing. So there you have it. The story of Andria's abuse of power in the service of her grudge against a neighbor and the cover-up of it. By the way, the next meeting of the commission, which would have been Andria's second meeting as a commissioner, she was strangely absent, and our request was approved by the other commissioners.
What a way to run a city.
Later, in an email and even face-to-face, Andria McClellan denied having said anything inappropriate at the Planning Commission.
Read between the lines.
First, I think I need to set the record straight regarding your house. I have always taken a neutral stance on this since its inception and long before my time on the Planning Commission. In the spirit of complete disclosure, yes, I am baffled as to why you would want to build on that narrow lot when so many other properties exist nearby. As to what was said at the Planning Commission, I don't believe I said anything unprofessional or inappropriate. I do recall you saying that everyone with whom you had spoken liked and supported your house. I countered this statement, knowing several who did not.
Why didn't she buy the lot herself? Do what she wanted to do with it.
My wife and I noticed the padlock some people had started putting on the nearby old pedestrian bridge, making it look like a shabby mess. But city officials didn't seem to care, so we decided to start a campaign to get the city to do its job and keep the old bridge lock-free. We started by distributing some flyers in the neighborhood to increase citizen awareness, because many people rarely wander down to the old bridge. I even put up a website about the issue and sent out emails to inform people. Then Andria McClellan started attacking us via Facebook posts and mass emailings.
As for those who are against this, please know they are in the minority. The anonymous creators of the flyers and accompanying website aren't yet residents of our neighborhood, although they are building the skinniest, possibly tallest building in The Hague as we speak.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave.
The whole point of my website was to ask, what does trashing a bridge with padlocks have to do with love? Maybe locking a padlock to a bridge is an individual gesture of love, but all those locks in the aggregate makes a mess of the bridge. So that gesture of love is also an instance of individual irresponsibility. And for pointing that out, Andria McClellan and her Facebook friends branded me a hater.
This is crazy! Someone has way too much time on their hands to spend so much time creating so much hate. I checked out the website. Disgusting! Hope they have a bright and happy day tomorrow. They need it.
Andria claimed to be particularly bent out of shape by some parody images I did for the website, since digital artwork is another of my hobbies. Andria even called these images salacious.
Salacious imagery.
Oh my God, does she even know what that word means? Nothing about them got me all hot and bothered. One image was of the mayor of Norfolk wearing lovelock earrings and with a big Norfolk Loves Lovelocks tattoo, since the city was refusing to stop the locks. Andria claimed she was speechless when she saw it.
I have to say I was speechless when I looked at the image of Mayor Frame with padlock earrings.
But not that speechless. Actually, I thought I gave the mayor some very respectable pecs and abs. Andria said she found it very distasteful that my giant dog alternative lovelock sculpture was whizzing on Norfolk's prestigious Chrysler Museum. My point being, if the locks were good enough for the historic bridge, why not for the prestigious museum?
I was speechless too at the sight of a giant dog urinating on the Chrysler Museum.
Still speechless?
But guess what? The idea of a giant dog peeing on a museum wasn't original. Check out this actual giant peeing dog sculpture at the Orange County Museum of Art in California. Guess that museum should have consulted with Andria first. And my image of a small child dangling from the rails of the neighborhood bridge really sent Andria over the top.
But the image of what appears to be a small child dangling off the bridge was really the most distasteful.
But it's simply a graphic way of showing what could happen since the bridge rail spindles are 7 inches apart instead of 4 inches, which is the modern day safety standard. So if you're down at the bridge with an adventurous toddler, better keep a close eye on him or her. But just to prove that Andria's shock and outrage and horror were as phony as a $3 bill, just excuses to bash a neighbor she doesn't like, here's a selfie she posted on Facebook from a Halloween party 2 years later. Golly gee, Andria, making light of murder and carnage? So much for her prudish prickliness about dark humor. When neighbors started removing the padlocks from the Hague Bridge, since Virginia law allows users of public rights-of-way to remove things like padlocks from them, Andria attacked me again on Facebook.
The Grinch who stole lovelocks? We have noticed that the locks, which so many have placed on the Hague pedestrian bridge in honor of their love, friends, those who have passed, have been disappearing. But my boys were shocked to find our neighbors in action, cutting them off tonight with a big bag of locks slung over his shoulder. Wow. Hashtag Grinch of Norfolk. Hashtag shame on them.
But her little horror story was simply a lie. Here's what actually happened. My wife and I often walk our dogs around the neighborhood, and sometimes we go out walking by ourselves at night, hand in hand, often down to the old bridge. So we were down there one night when I saw a car pull up to the foot of the bridge and park near a street lamp. I immediately recognized it as Andria's distinctive blue and white Mini Cooper, driven by Andria herself. I think she was actually stalking my wife and me, something she failed to mention in her little story. Then two of Andrea's teenage sons jumped out of her car, and one of them approached us, pointing his phone at us. I'm sure he was photographing us. He even yelled something at us, but we just ignored him and kept on walking. The next day, Andrea posted her Grinch attack on Facebook, but she didn't post any photo of me with that big bag of locks slung over my shoulder because it simply wasn't true. But that didn't stop Andrea McClellan from telling just another whopper.
My boys were shocked.
Shocked, I tell you. Shocked.
So what should we call her?